my pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker of today, Dr. Allan J. Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton started his working career as a janitor, and eventually went on to graduate from the Harvard Medical School and completed his neurosurgical residency training at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. Dr. Hamilton holds 4 professorships at the University of Arizona in neurosurgery, clinical radiation oncology, psychology, and electrical and computer engineering. For the last several years, Dr. Hamilton has served as a medical script consultant on the hit TV show Grey's Anatomy, and on 4 seasons with private practice. And he now serves as the executive director of the Arizona Simulation Technology and Education Center, which is part of the as a multidisciplinary think tank at the Arizona Health Sciences Center. It's devoted to advancing new technologies and procedures that can reduce preventable medical adverse effects. In addition, he has authored over 20 chapters to medical textbooks, authored 50 peer-reviewed articles and served on the editorial board of several medical journals. And he's the author of 2 books and the subject of 2 documentaries. One highlights his work with horses, and the other with his advocacy for end-of-life care, continuing the conversation is a particularly wonderful piece of work. He's also a decorated Army officer and served in Operation Desert Storm. I'd like to now welcome Dr. Allan Hamilton.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about storytelling. And I'm going to also talk about how stories reflect society's values. So the reason this works is because of the limbic system, which I've shown to you in green. Stories connect cognitive content with the emotional part of the brain, which is the limbic system, which looks for what's the emotional context of that cognitive content. So stories bind those 2 systems together, the neocortex and the limbic system. So you have to remember that stories are always about people. That's what we're looking for. And stories connect people. They connect the storyteller with whoever's listening and absorbing the stories. And stories are about journeys. They have to be about a journey of some kind. Now that could be a real journey. I go from one land to another, one landscape to another, one culture to another, but they can also be a symbolic one. So for example, we could talk about what happened with Apple as a sort of a symbolic journey of following Steve Jobs from the very beginning to the very polished global company it is now. You cannot tell a story if you don't have a listener. So it's the listener who has the power, and if they're not listening, it doesn't matter what the story is that you're telling. And in the television business, if they're not looking at your program, it doesn't matter what you have shot. The other part of the story that you need to be aware of is stories have structure, okay? And in the television business, what we call that the arc, okay? And you have to obey the arc. You have to understand the story has to start somewhere, have a middle, and have an end. And you have to use your story to really unmask your product. So you want to unmask your product to reveal what it really is, okay? So use your story to reveal the human side of your brand or your services or what have you. So let me give you an example. For this talk, I was in Costco, and I just thought, I'll ask people why they are in Costco. So this is what they said. They said, well, no matter what's wrong with it, you can return it. I trust their brand. They go out and shop the brands and find out what's best and most cost effective. They take good care of their employees, and you can see it when you're in the store. So the point was, everybody had a story that really made Costco come alive. It wasn't Costco itself, it was their vision of the story of Costco. So I want you to sort of think about this, that in some ways, whatever you're offering, whatever the product is, the service, what have you, that's the hero of your story. So I'll tell you a story. Back in 2008, 2 men were in Paris. It was a snowy night. It was a wet, heavy snow, and it was falling inch by inch. and they were trying to get back to their hotel. But the streets were completely jammed with snow, and there were no cabs, and they were huddled under this wet snow, and they were cold, and they were wet, and they were miserable, and they waited for over an hour for the cab, and they got in the cab just shaking and shivering, and they said to themselves, how come it's so hard for us to find a vehicle? There must be some kind of way that we could go and help ourselves to find a vehicle and summon it at the right time. And that's how Uber was born, okay? And you know, now it's a $18.2 billion industry, and as you know, I think that Travis Kalanick's not without his controversy. He was just asked to take a leave of absence 2 days ago because they're having problems in the company with issues of sexual harassment and sexual conduct. And so this brings me to the final rule, which is, I'm sorry wait, but I'll tell you what it is. A story that embodies an essential truth can become a legend. But if it's meant to camouflage an inconvenient truth, they'll see through it just as propaganda. So you have to encapsulate real human values in order to make your story work. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit for you and talk about medical drama and how medical drama as a story reflects the values that society has.